Go to TAPgiles.com to learn dreams, engage my services, and support the channel. Here I'll show how to make logic that appears at some object while you're close enough to it. This was originally made to be able to discover objects like plants or animals, and have checker logic to figure out if it was already discovered and so on. But the principles can easily be applied to any number of things. But the principle of this is quite simple. So first I'll have a block that we actually see, and then I have a chip with it. Okay, and then I'll have another block which is the checker. So that's the visible block, that's the checker block. So if I just make this slightly desaturated, you can tell the difference. Yeah, so this is going to be like a discoverable block, and that's going to emit and unemit this thing, which will actually check to see if you can discover it and handle all that stuff. So, cool. So first we need to know if we are close to the block itself. And when we're close enough, then we'll emit that other block. So we'll use a tag, and we'll have a puppet so we can run around. So in here we want to detect that tag within a radius. So if I just move that there, and that will look for this tag. So we'll give that a name. We'll call it check, for example, and then we'll have that look for the check tag. When this tag goes inside that zone, it will send a signal from tag output. So that's how this block will know it's inside that zone. And when it is inside that zone, we will emit this object here. So let's go and emit when that is in the zone, and we just emit once and with no speed, and we want to emit that thing, and now I'll move that over. So this is the preview of where it's going to emit relative to the gadget. So now it'll emit in the same spot as the existing cube. Cool, and that's all that's going to do. So you can have tons and tons of these, and it's absolutely fine because it's very simple logic. And then we want to limit the amount of these that exist. So if I go turn off preview invisibility, we can see it again. And this will have the more complex logic. So first, let's just display something so we know that it's working at all. Text displayer. And I'm going to just have a circle. So I tend to use UI sphere for the circle, and then put it in scene so that it's next to the chip, and I'll just move it kind of to the top of there and make it white, turn off the background and stuff, and have it face the camera and always on top. And now it will be seen even through sculpts and things, so it's useful for UI that is in the scene. So let's just set that up. So for now, I'll just make a copy of a few of those blocks. Let's make sure it's not collidable. Now we can just wander through them as we want to. And go into play mode. So those appear sort of, and you can see the less saturated version is the emitted box. That is kind of appearing, and it has that text box with the dot. But now it's not disappearing when we go away from it. So that's the next part we need to do. And we'll just make this non-collidable as well. Yeah, we want to destroy this when it's not in that zone. So if we grab that and put it in there. So this is going to send a signal while it's in that zone. So if it's not sending a signal, then we're not in that zone. So we'll put it through a NOT gate. And then we use a destroyer to destroy the block. So this this chip isn't linked to the block or the group or anything at the moment. That's so that we can selectively destroy pieces of logic in here. So to tell this destroyer to actually destroy the whole group, I'll tweak the destroyer and use affected objects, and I'll just link it like a wire like that. And now when that powers on, it will destroy that block. And I'll just make this like a really obvious colour. There we go. So let's see, let's just make this a bit smaller so that you can tell what's going on. So now we've got this area of those checker blocks just around us, and as we leave, it's not using any thermo and it just disappears. Like, I guess logistically, you need to compare the costs. So this costs 2 gadgets, and then this has like a load of gadgets. So this emitter is worth it because it's saving a load of gadgets in there, and these 2 gadgets versus these many objects is worth it. But for graphics or something, if it was just like if it was just like a tuft of grass or something, that's 1 object on the thermo. So if you had this logic to emit it and then other logic in there to unemit it and things like that, it wouldn't actually be helpful, because now you've got, instead of 1 object, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objects for each of these tufts of grass or whatever. So it can definitely be worth it in different situations, but that's the kind of comparison you've got to make. And just a quick note, so I've got this slightly simplified version here, where you got the same kind of pop-up spawner things going on. But you can, if all you want is the closest one to the character to have its pop-up spawn, then you can just change out, instead of using a trigger zone, you can say use the follower directly in here, and that will target this spawn tag, and we just put these down to 0 and target the spawn tag. There it is, and it has like a range on it, so you can still have it only be in range around a certain radius around the player, sort of thing, like that. But now that will only spawn if it's the closest one. And that. Okay, so now only the closest one. But the problem now is this is using the same tag name. So what happens is we go close to this block on the corner. That says it's the closest one, so I'm going to emit the block over this spawned block, and then but that one's still the closest one, and this one isn't. So now this one doesn't think it should be still there, so then it destroys itself. So if we just use a different name for this, like that, and then we have another follower looking for that different tag, then one follower will say that it should have a thing spawned, and the other follower will say the thing that was spawned should still be there. So now if we try that, then it sticks around. So that's like a shortcut if you don't want to go the full hog. Another way of doing this is to teleport the same object to the closest spot. So this is good for something like computer terminals or something, where it's quite a complex object with lots of logic in it and lots of UI and whatnot, but you only ever need to have one of them existing. So you can just teleport it to the closest actual terminal position, and then it will do stuff there. So if we just adjust this slightly and make it have like a direction it's facing. So it's facing in that direction. And then we have this tag, which, yeah, let's put it on the grid. That's in the center of the box, and it's got Z pointing forwards. And this is going to be like the reference point that this is going to snap to. So I'll just call this something. There we go. And if we then, I'll give this some actual display stuff in the scene. Okay, so it's going to say UI on the box or whatever. Yeah, and then we want to teleport it to that snap point. So up and down the D-pad, snap, and we want to match the orientation as well. So like if this is facing a funny way, or that chip needs to affect the group. It's not going to like match it properly. Oh, and we need to make sure that that gizmo is in the center of the box as well. But if we turn on match orientation, then it will rotate to face the same way as this tag is facing. So Z of the box there is pointing forwards, and the Z of the tag is pointing forwards. So then it will rotate to match. But we only want the snap point that is closest to the player. So if we have another tag that is closest, then we can get the follower to look for the closest tag, and then only the closest of that kind of tag will actually send a signal. So if I'll just copy that. So this is the closer one on the right, so that's the one that is activating, and then we can power the snap tag, so then it would snap to there, and we do the same there. Cool, and it's going there, and then if we go closer to this one, it's going to snap to that one. So then you can have like a whole scene with lots of computer terminals, and it will just snap to the closest one as the player moves around. So now if we if we just like make copies of these around the place, we can see how that works. So this one is the current one, and then this one, and you can imagine if this is on like a space station or something, you'll never see it move, it will just teleport to the closest one, and because it will currently be behind like a wall, and then when you turn a corner and go to the next one, it will appear there instead. Things like that. Probably what you want also for this kind of, if we're going with the computer terminal example, is you might have some state in here, like you're in some menu, and you want that to reset if you go to a different terminal, and then the menu and stuff resets. So so you kind of want to detect when it's actually changing and moving position. For a demo of to give an example, I'm just going to have this, actually I'll just use a action recorder, and it will like just make the colors move and stuff, and then settle on this dark blue. So it's going through different colors, and then it settles on the dark blue. But then if we move to a new position, so dark blue, and then we move to a new position, it doesn't replay that because it doesn't know it's moved, and it doesn't really care. So there's a tutorial about this with a trick with the calculators, so I won't go in depth with it, but if you use the scene space transform, and you split it so that you can get the position separately, so you get the position and wire that in, then you can wire A into B. So now this is the current position, this is the previous position on the previous frame, and if you want to check if they're equal, so if they're equal then it hasn't moved, if they're not equal then it has moved, but we need to like check to see that will actually give like a yes or no for each of the X, Y, and Z. So we need to like do this trick, and that will actually have a magnitude of. So I just want to check if that fat wire gives a magnitude value, which will be 1.732, as you can see up there. So if it's, and we need to do L1 and X on here to use the modulate mode, and multiply it by 1, and that will get the actual magnitude and just that. And then we see if that is equal to 1.732, and that means that we haven't moved. And then if we have moved, so we're not stationary, then we can reset this timeline. So we'll just restart the timeline like that. Yeah, so let's see if that works. So dark blue, and then go to this one, and it reset and did the color switching stuff, and it'll do that each time. Yeah, so that's another way to do this kind of pop-up thing, but for another specific circumstance. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something interesting. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to learn something new every day.